Good evening and welcome to Straight Talk. This is Eugene Chan and our guest tonight is Mr. Ricky Chu. He is the chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission. Welcome, Ricky.
Good evening, Eugene. Good evening,
Before we start,
yeah.
we often address our guests as chairman or chairlady, but for you it's chairperson. Is there any special meaning of the word chairperson?
I think it was designed when we first set up. We want to be gender equal. So instead of choosing between lady, gentleman, man, etc., we just use chairperson so that it's a perpetually correct term.
Right. So basically you do practice what you preach, isn't it?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Right. So thank you very much for coming again. Tonight we're going to talk about, is Hong Kong a land of equal opportunities? The word Equal Opportunities Commission, in short EOC, or in Chinese 平機會, is a term that is commonly known to many Hong Kong people, that if something happens to us, anything that's unequal, unfair, they think of Equal Opportunity Commission. It's just like watching the movie Batman. You see the bat signal in the sky. Wow, we need help. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Since we set up in 1996, 25 years ago, following the enactment of the Sex Discrimination Ordinance, followed very shortly by another two ordinances called Disability Discrimination Ordinance as well as the Family Status Discrimination Ordinance. Mm-hmm. We set up to enforce these three ordinances back in 1996, and then in 2009, the fourth Anti-Discrimination Ordinance come into action. That is the Race Discrimination Ordinance. So now we are the statutory organization enforcing four ordinances.
Right.
The approach we do is quite comprehensive. We use a basically three-point approach consisting of law enforcement, prevention, and public education. So every year, in average, I think we receive more than 1,200 complaints, sometimes rising to as high as 2,000. Whenever a person feeling aggrieved by being discriminated because of sex, pregnancy, race, or he or she need to take care of somebody in family, so family status, or disability, including the contraction of disease, like the current hot topic, the pandemic.
Right.
So whenever a person feels being aggrieved, he can come to EOC for either lodging a complaint or even asking questions for inquiries. Mm-hmm. We are duty-bound by law to assist him or her to sort out the difficulties. If it is a complaint, we try to conciliate with the parties to see whether we can reach some sort of agreement. If agreement falls out, we go to legal action. We take civil action if the cases warrant. So apart from enforcing the law, we do hold project researches trying to advocate equal opportunity policies to urge the government to improve the practices or even to promote values of equal opportunity. We offer trainings to private sector as well as the public sector, civil servants, enhancing their sensitivities. We also do legal researches. Say like later on, I would be talking about some new researches on the legal side that we are doing.
Right. So, Chairperson, you just mentioned there are four main areas you look at, either sex discrimination or the disability, family status, or race. Maybe we start with sex or gender. What will be the most common issue that the men on the street will encounter daily that they will feel uncomfortable or they feel being discriminated against? Maybe we can start explore that with the audience.
In the past few years, the most common type of complaints or inquiries relating to the sex discrimination issues are sexual harassment,
right?
Pregnancy discrimination, or other verbal or behavioral unfair treatment to employees.
So that would be the most common complaint you
receive? 80% of our complaints are related to employment matters.
Right. Do you get any complaints on being on a certain gender, either male or female, and not having the equal opportunity. Do you get that complaint anymore?
Relatively much less than what the types that I've been mentioning about. I mean, even in Hong Kong nowadays, you seldom come across a man or a woman come up to the EOC complaining that, oh, because of my gender, I'm being discriminated.
So then in Hong Kong,
rare.
It's getting better by the day. I mean,
in that area, we are doing, in fact, quite well.
Right. And you mentioned about sexual harassment. I mean, what exactly about sexual harassment do people face?
Yeah, just recently, we are having a case contemplating to go to court. Is that there is a woman working in a restaurant, and during her work, she has some encounter, among to close bodily encounter with other staff of male gender, and then some row ensue, and then she complained of being sexually harassed. Mm-hmm. So this is the common kind of complaint.
Can this be a very common subjective feeling that, I mean, somebody could have just accidentally, I mean, just, or I would say, touching the body and unintentionally, or the person take it the other way? I mean, do you see that often? Well,
that's the point of argument that most of these complaints involve. Of course, if you are on the defensive side, then you have all sorts of defending rationales behind your action. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the other side, the aggrieved person, will differently. And that's why it becomes a complaint. And that's the area that EOC is trying to sort out. The approach we do is first to try to conciliate between the parties, to see whether it could be resolved peacefully, so to say, instead of going to court. Mm-hmm. We don't want to waste the court's time unnecessarily. So unless the complainant and the person being complained of cannot reach agreement, and then the case has an issue that warrants further action to clarify, or even we think someone has indeed committed some behavior which are contrary to the law, then we have no choice. They can't get into an agreement. We go to court.
But do most cases get conciliated?
More than 80% of them can get conciliated.
So people are quite sensible in a way.
In general, I think people in Hong Kong are quite sensible. But of course, you can never expect 100% conciliation rate. There are bound to be people that the agreement cannot be resolved unless you really go to court and ask for a judgment.
Right. Just how you mentioned breastfeeding, and I understand there will be a new ordinance on the 19th of June coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any special reason why this suddenly come up as a new addition or new amendment?
Yeah, the history of breastfeeding discrimination and harassment, in fact, goes back to the year 2014, when the EOC was conducting a legal research in various areas, including this one. And we found that at that time, the breastfeeding issue are common in workplace, that the new mothers, so to say, wanting to feed their babies, they often have to express milk during the work time. And then they encounter difficulties like lacking of privacy, no room for them to do so, or they may have to bear with other colleagues' humiliating remarks sometimes. Really? You know.
So what do you suggest employers to do to assist this process so that there won't be any discrimination?
Yeah, so with the new law coming in, effective this coming Saturday, the employers need to reasonably provide accommodation facilities to the employees who are expressing milk or doing acts relating to breastfeeding. And say provide a certain place which has sufficient or reasonable privacy, and then the colleagues surrounding the breastfeeding mother should avoid making humiliating remarks or even remarks that may cause embarrassment or let a person feel uncomfortable. They should avoid doing all this.
Right. So in the future, all mothers will be very comfortable in looking after their children, isn't it?
Hope so, with the new law enacting.
But maybe we move on to the other parts you mentioned earlier about disability discrimination ordinance. As the term rightly says so, I'm sure that I've read in many articles before that your commission had done a great job in the year 2010, whereby you have big proposals to the government, whereby they have spent $1.3 billion and changing 3,500 premises into more friendly for the disabled person. Is that true?
Oh yeah, indeed, Eugene, you study our work pretty well. Yeah, back in 2010, we conducted a territory-wide study on the accessibility issues in terms of most of the government buildings in Hong Kong. And we found that a lot of those buildings lack accessibility assistance to people with disability, i.e. Wheelchair users or people having problem in eyesight, listening power, etc. So we are urging the government to improve the facilities, say by way of enhancing the accessibility. Instead of just letting people to use the steps, they may use ramps in certain cases, etc. Or some sound-assisted device be installed, etc. The government had received our report very well. In that they put up, eventually, they put up $1.3 billion to cause over 3,500 buildings in Hong Kong be improved by installing devices or the facilities.
Right. Chairperson, I want to thank you personally because I've got two elderly parents who uses wheelchair, and it's so much handy when you have been able to access them to different premises. Okay, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. We have been talking to Ricky Chu, the chairman of EOC, about our rights of equal opportunities in Hong Kong. In the first part, we have discussed on sex and disability discrimination. Before we move on to the next topic, one of the very hot topics right now, as you mentioned right at the beginning, is about our COVID-19. We had the introduction of the vaccination bubble program that relating to the employees. What rights do the employees have?
Yeah, this has always been a public concern. And for answering this question, we have to rely on Section 61 of the Discrimination Against Disability Ordinance. In Section 61, it says that for the purpose of preventing a disease, in this case, the pandemic, employers or the governments can roll out preventive measures. So the compulsory vaccination or the compulsory checking are these measures. So it falls into the category. It's all right for you to roll out the measures, but then the discrimination issue comes up when people disagree to comply with the measures. Then you have to consider what treatment, what result would be for those people who has been vaccinated, those people who have not been vaccinated.
Especially as an employee.
Yeah, for the in this case, the employees. So there are bound to be difference in treatment, right?
Exactly.
Those people who got a jab can do certain things. Those people who hasn't got a jab cannot do certain things. This is technically discrimination.
Right.
But is it against the law? It may or may not, depending on two key words: reasonable and necessary. The employer has to justify that the outcome of complying or non-complying with the preventive measure are reasonable and necessary for the purpose of preventing the pandemic.
Right. So, Chairperson, sorry to ask you a very direct question on behalf of our audience. A lot of families have domestic helpers. Is it all right if we ask our domestic helpers to have the vaccination for their own sake as well as for the family? It's reasonable? It is necessary? Does that constitute discrimination?
It is certainly reasonable for the employer to ask the employee to comply with it. The issue comes up when the employee say, sorry, for some reason, either medical reason, psychological reason, or other reasons, I cannot comply with your request.
Right.
Then the decision is on the employer. What are you going to do? If the employer said, oh, in that case, I fire you, then the employee may lodge a complaint or may even directly go to court and sue you, isn't it? It's her right.
They are right, yes.
And that's the issue of reasonableness and necessity come into play, the employer must justify that, oh, I have to dismiss you because otherwise certain things would happen.
If you have elderly parents, for example.
Something like that. So it has to be on a case-by-case basis, and we cannot in general say that it is against the law or otherwise. That's the complication. So what I've been urging the public to do is that for the outcome of non-compliance with the measures, we suggest both parties sit together, find out what the reasonable solution can be. Is there any alternative measures that both sides can accept? For example, for a domestic helper, first of all, what's the reason why you refuse? If you say, oh, because I have medical proof that because I have high blood pressure or other allergic issues, I can't take the vaccine. So if this is a confirmed medical view that she would be at risk if she take the vaccine, then it would be unreasonable for you to fire her immediately, isn't it? Then you would try to find out, say, okay, for example, is it due to medical problem? Can you get it cured? Can you take other medical treatment, say, for 2 or 3 months, and then you can, you're all right now, you can get a jab? If that is, then the employer should take that course of action.
Right, okay. So thank you very much for clearing up. I'm sure the audience will want me to ask you. So let's also look at a recent issue that happened in Legislative Council. There have been quite a lot of news lately about the gay games to be held in Hong Kong. It's going to be the first one in Asia in November. And the main argument is on whether the government should help the organizer of the games to actually put money and logistic support. And you have replied, I mean, quite a number of times in the media. I can just find so many comments in the public domain. What is your take on that?
Yeah, first of all, we respect and understand that this issue is controversial because of the background of the hosting party, the gay game. But from EOC's perspective, we have been supporting the gay game since 2016-17, when they applied the right to get Hong Kong to host the next gay game in 2022 November. It happens in 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
The reason of the EOC doing so is that we look at the gay game's objective. The gay game, even the name is gay game. It actually open to all without any restriction. Anyone can participate, as simple as that. So we see that the vision and the goal of the gay game is just to allow everybody to have a role to play in
but however,
this activity.
the name gay games imply the games for the gay. I mean, that's on literally explanation. Why do you say that it involves everybody?
We will say that it is hosted by the party promoting the benefit and the welfare of the LGBTI community.
Right.
That's the background. But we cannot say that the host of a certain background organizing an event, then if you support that event, it must mean that you support the whole range of purpose advocated by that particular party. Because if you apply this logic, then there would be a lot of restriction for people to support a certain activities. They need to look at the background very closely. For example, if some activity is organized by the party with a certain political belief, then does it mean that you support the activity even if it is just a sports activity? You support the ultimate purpose of that belief.
So Chairperson,
it's 2 different things.
So you are saying that you understand the perspectives of what the other people are bringing up. You do understand.
Yeah, and we respect that as well.
But you won't reconsider it. You won't reconsider your decision.
Our stance would be the same because the gay game is open for all. So it fits with our vision that we want to achieve Hong Kong as a pluralistic and diversified and also inclusive city. We wouldn't link the game to the whole range of the objective that a certain parties is advocating for. Besides, they do not voice out in organizing the gay game that they want to push for a certain move
Right.
They didn't say that.
Okay. All right. Okay. So maybe we move on to the next one, because there are so many issues that we're interested to ask you. So, Chairperson, as regarding to race, I know race discrimination is one part of your work, and I'm sure a lot of Hong Kong people have realized that in the last few years, in particular, there may be some discrimination against the Chinese from mainland, the mainlanders, like the restaurants and like whether they are allowed to do certain things. Are you concerned?
Yes, very concerned. Because, Eugene, you point out this problem. It can even be dated back more than 2 years ago. You still remember that in those old days, when the mainland Chinese tourists come to Hong Kong, shopping, etc., they bring with their products.
The suitcases.
The suitcases. When they are entering the border area, the suitcase got kicked. Even the tourists themselves got attacked. So the problem has been a long-term problem and become very acute since 2019. For obvious reason, you have seen scenarios whereby mainland reporter being captured in the airport, restaurant posting notice, refusing to serve people from mainland, or even people talking with Mandarin. So we look at the issue. We compile a legal research report, and the report has been completed. And we propose to the government in end of March by way of 4 options to resolve this discrimination against mainland people issue. What are the 4 options we propose? In a nutshell, very simple. First one, we want a clarified clause be stipulated out, spell the obvious, that people can discriminate another person, even they are of the same ethnic origin. I.e., Chinese people discriminating against Chinese people should be against the law. It is always the case, but it is not spelled out clearly in the law. We want it spelled out obviously. Option 1. Option 2, we want to put in a new clause that it is against the law for people to discriminate another one of their resident status.
The third one?
The third one is that it's against the law to discriminate someone who comes from a different place than you in mainland China.
The last one?
The last one is that for all these cases that I've seen in 2 years, there is one common feature: lack of complainant. We want EOC be empowered to investigate and prosecute these kind of cases in the absence of an aggrieved person.
Right. Thank you, Ricky. I mean, thank you for coming and share with us about the EOC's work. And that means next time, if we feel that we are being discriminated against, we know our rights.
You're most welcome.
So thank you for joining us. See you next week. Good night.